Welcome back to our continuing live coverage of George Zimmerman on trial for second-degree murder. I'm Ashley Banfield, live in Sanford, Florida at the Seminole County Criminal Justice Center. You are not missing any testimony. They are in a brief break inside that courtroom, but man, was that significant what we heard today. The Great Seal is the shot you're seeing now, but we're going to give you more testimony, and we're going to get you right back into the live action just the minute it sparks back up. In the meantime, I want to break down why this latest witness is so critical. Detective Doris Singleton has been on the stand for the better part of an hour. Our CNN legal analyst and criminal defense attorney NeJame is live with me here in Sanford, Florida. While we've been listening to this, Mark, there have been so many bits and pieces that maybe have escaped the general consumption, the media consumption of this case, and they are the details that are the devil, right? Or maybe not. Specifically, what George Zimmerman said he did after he shot Trayvon Martin. Explain the wording and why it's critical.
Well, I think you framed it perfectly, Ashley. I think what so many have missed and what's so profound to me is we're going to end up hearing the defense come forward and say those witnesses, those first several witnesses who all said that they saw George Zimmerman atop Trayvon Martin, they're going to end up bringing to the jurors that, yes, he was on top of him at a certain time, but only after he was shot. And then he laid him out, and he was atop him, which then becomes consistent with all these first witnesses who came out running and looked through their windows and said that they saw George Zimmerman atop Trayvon Martin. So that seems to have escaped everybody, because apparently there was a moment in time where George Zimmerman, according to what we're hearing from Zimmerman, was atop him. Now, that's when you start putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, that becomes consistent with the defense theory, that Trayvon Martin was atop George Zimmerman throughout, and then the shooting took place, but then after that there was a rollover. And because, remember, this all happens within a few seconds, so people get little smidgens of little look-sees, and then that starts piecing the case together.
And I want to bring in a couple of other of our guests as well. In fact, before I bring in my other guests, we've been able to isolate that particular moment of testimony that is so critical. I want to replay it for you. I want you to listen really carefully to what this detective and George Zimmerman are discussing and the description of this moment in the fight. Have a listen. In the second-degree murder trial of George Zimmerman, live here in Sanford, Florida, you're not missing a moment of live testimony. They're in a brief break in that courtroom, and that's why you see the Great Seal. When the camera fixates on the seal, it means mics are dead, action stops, but it also gives us an opportunity to put into perspective what you have heard and why it matters. Sometimes it seems weird why certain things are played out in court, but it is all a chess game and a puzzle, and it is strategy, make no mistake. This morning, you may have thought that you were hearing a defense case, but you're not. You are still in the prosecution case. Last week, you might have thought the same thing. You're still in the prosecution case. They could be headed somewhere very significant, and here's where they may be headed. There is more evidence, videotaped evidence, that's coming in, likely today, probably this afternoon in this case, and it's George Zimmerman walking back to the scene of the incident, the killing the night before. The next morning, bandaged up with butterfly bandages on the back of his head, he walks police investigators back through the scene, and he gives them his perspective, how it all played out, moment by moment, word for word. Words matter. Let's listen to this particular moment where he describes that fight and how it came to an end and the words that were used. And you see if you can pick out any inconsistencies. Have a listen.
I kept yelling, help, 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 as long as I could. He put his hand on his nose, on my nose, and his other hand on my mouth. He said, shut the up. And then I tried squirming again, because all I could think about was when he was hitting my head against it, felt like my head was going to explode, and I thought I was going to lose consciousness. So I tried to squirm so that I could get, because he only had a small portion of my head on the concrete, so I tried to squirm off the concrete. And when I did that, somebody here opened the door, and I said, help me, help me. And they said, I'll call 911. I said, no, help me. I need help. And I don't know what they did, but that's when my jacket moved up, and I had my firearm on my right side hip. My jacket moved up, and He saw it. I feel like he saw it. He looked at it, and he said, "You're gonna die tonight." And he reached for it, but he reached, like I felt his arm going down to my side, and I grabbed it, and I just grabbed my firearm, and I shot him one time.
Well, there you have it. Listen, to my untrained eye, that sounds pretty darn consistent to what he said the night before to the investigator in the interrogation room and what he wrote down in his written statement that was played in open court just within the last hour. But I'm not the best at this. Mark NeJame is here. He's our CNN analyst who's tried a few cases in the state of Florida. And you've also been privy to so much of this case as well. You've been reading along with the discovery as it's been made public. I haven't been able to spot the inconsistencies that the prosecutor promised us would indict George Zimmerman, his own words that would indict him. But you're better at this.
No, and you're right. I do not see any material discrepancies. Never are you going to have two statements that line up and match perfectly.
Because we're not perfect.
And we're human beings. And the fact of the matter is that I don't see a single major inconsistency that the prosecutor can say, look, he's lying. Now, maybe the prosecutor's going to be laying more out with witnesses, showing that the times that George Zimmerman said all this could have happened, couldn't have happened, because they're going to measure out times and distances and matters such as that. But with statements, no, he's been consistent from start to finish about how this played out.
So you do play-by-play with me. I mean, we're always chatting away as we're watching this happening live. And the first thing you said to me, Mark, while we were just watching that moment was, hold it. How on earth can you have your hand over your mouth and nose and continue a beat down, a ground and pound?
Yeah, and that's a very valid point, because remember, all this is happening within split seconds. And so in here you heard him say that his mouth was covered, his nose was covered, which was consistent with his earlier statements. But you didn't hear any of the other witnesses saying, yes, that was what happened. So we did hear them say there was a ground and pound, and I think it's going to be pretty clear when the forensics come in that it was, in fact, George Zimmerman on the bottom. The state's trying to make a case otherwise. The state's trying to make a case otherwise, but I think it's a weak situation. Grass stains, forensics, distance of the shot. We'll get into that later.
I can't wait for forensics. They tell such an incredible story.
Right.
Mark NeJame, thank you very much. To the rest of my guests also, thank you very much, Danny Savalas and also Joey Jackson. That's it for me. This has been a special edition of Newsroom, and we're covering the George Zimmerman trial. You're going to go right back in for live testimony, and I'm back here again at 11 a.m. Eastern with more from Sanford, Florida. I'm Ashley Banfield. Thanks so much for watching.